Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another wonderful day of math. Today is Monday, October 19th, and today we are going to be exploring more with multiplication. So let's begin. So today we are focusing on multiplying with 0 and 1. So far you have worked with your teacher to learn about how to multiply with 2s, how to multiply with 5s, and how to multiply with 9s. So today it is all about multiplying with 0 and 1. So let's check out that little superhero there. I like to say 0 is our hero. What do you think happens when you multiply with 0? Think about that for a second. What do you think happens when you multiply with 0? Okay, let's think about the next question. 1 is fun. What do you think happens when you multiply with 1? So these are going to be the two questions today that we are really exploring. What happens when you multiply with 0 and what happens when you multiply with 1? Let's begin. So to get your brain warmed up, we would like you to turn to page 73 of your math book and be prepared to solve this problem. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to turn to page 73. Okay, so now I am going to read this problem to you 2 times. The first time, we always read for fun, just like in reading. The second time, we read to understand the math. So let's begin. Carlos said that 6 times 0 equals 6. Do you agree? Explain your thinking with a model and words. Once you have done that, boys and girls, you are to circle at the bottom which multiplication problem matches the word problem above. Is it 6 times 0 equals 6, 6 times 0 equals 0, and 6 times 1 equals 6? You are picking the equation that matches what you think it's going to be. So do you agree with Carlos? And if you do not agree with him, then what would the equation actually be? So I'm going to give you some time to think about this. So in this space, you are figuring out, is Carlos right or wrong? Then you're picking what is the correct word problem or the correct equation for that. I'll give you about 1 minute. You have about 15 seconds left. Okay, boys and girls, so if I was going to represent 6 times 0 mathematically, it would look like this. 6 times 0. So Carlos thinks that 6 times 0 is 6. But let's think about what these two factors represent. We know that 6 represents the number of groups and 0 represents the amount inside each group. So let's draw that. So this is where I am using a model. So here's my 6 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's nothing in the groups. So if there's nothing in the groups, then I have nothing to count up. That means there's nothing there. 6 times 0 equals 0. So I would say, no, I disagree with Carlos, because if I have 6 groups with nothing in the groups, then there is nothing there. The answer is 0, which obviously means the multiplication problem that is correct would be 6 times 0 is 0. So unfortunately, Carlos is wrong, but that's okay. He's still learning. So let's go ahead and continue on to the next slide. Okay, so we have here some images. Use the images below to help you solve this problem. And boys and girls, we're going to do this one right in front of you. We're not going to be in your math book for this one. So Kira has 8 plates. There are her plates right there that I'm pointing to, the white plates, with 1 orange on each plate. How many oranges does Kira have? And then once you have figured out your answer, you're going to come down here and decide what multiplication equation matches that word problem above. I'm going to read it again to you. Kira has 8 plates with 1 orange on each plate. How many oranges does Kira have? I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer the question and to circle or to think about the multiplication equation. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. So when you were looking at this, it wants to know how many oranges Kira has. Obviously, you could have used your finger or your pointer to count the oranges on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So obviously, Kira has 8 oranges. But that was the easy part. This is the tricky part. Which multiplication equation matches that word problem? So in order to do that, you have to know in the equation blank times blank, what do the blanks represent? So you all know from your wonderful 3rd grade teachers that the first factor represents the number of groups. So how many groups do we have? Well, there's 8 groups because there's 8 plates. How many items, or oranges in this case, are in each group? 1. 8 times 1 equals 8. Kira has 8 oranges represented by that equation. Let's continue working. Okay, so we are now going to get back into our math book. You're going to work with me in this case to complete 3, 4, 6, and 8 on page 75. So I'm going to go ahead and X out of my presentation here, and I'm going to move into our Pearson Realize book that looks just like this. So I'm going to move along. And here we are on page 75. So we're going to go ahead and start with question number 3. We have here our 3 groups with 3 dots in each group. 3 times 1 is what? So there's your 3 groups. You have an item in each group. Count them up, 1, 2, 3. It should be 3 times 1. Easy peasy. Move on to question number 4. And boys and girls, for those of you who aren't there yet, I'm going to back up for a second. I maybe went a little too fast. Make sure you are on page 75, question 3. That's the one we just did. 75, question 3. I'll give you 10 seconds if you weren't quite ready for that yet. Okay, I hope you're ready now. So we just did question 3 together and determined that 3 times 1 equals 3. So now let's do number 4. Now we have 3 groups, just like in the one above, but there's nothing in the groups. So think about what we already did in the presentation. You have 3 groups, but there's nothing there, means that you have how much? You should have picked 0. There's nothing there. So the answer is 0. Okay, so we are going to keep moving on. And I'm going to circle question number 6 and question number 8. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to answer question 6 and question 8. Really think about what the factors mean. What do they represent? You have a 5 times 0 and then a 2 times 1. Please begin. Okay, so in number 6, it is 5 times 0, like I've already said, which really means 5 groups of nothing. Nothing is there, so the answer is 0. And boys and girls, before I go any further, as you can tell, there is a pattern here. Anytime you multiply with 0, your answer is going to be 0. And if you look up here, that is called the 0 property of multiplication. That is a rule that we are going to follow with multiplication when using 0. It'll always be 0. So now let's move on to number 8. 2 times 1. You should have picked 2. And just like we talked about with the zeros, here's another rule. We set up here 3 times 1 is 3. Oh, that matches. That matches that 3. 2 times 1 is 2. That 2 matches that 2. That is called the identity property. That is another rule when working with number 1. Anytime you multiply with 1, your answer is going to be the other factor. What? Crazy. We are learning a lot of really cool stuff today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. And we are going to move down below. It won't let me move without doing that, so I apologize. Okay, really quickly, I am going to walk you through some of these, but before we do that, nope, you know what? I think we're ready. I'm going to come down here in a second. But right now, let's go ahead and do number 12 and number 13. I'd like you to continue working on these on your own. Just 12 and 13. Go ahead and start. Okay, boys and girls, so let's first talk about number 12. Number 12, the equation is 9 times 1. Oh my goodness, circle that 1. That 1 is telling us about the rule. We should know from me showing you earlier, anytime you multiply with 1, it is the other factor as the answer. It also means 9 groups of 1. You're adding 1 9 times. The answer is 9. Very good. Give yourself a hand if you got it right, which I know you did because you are so super smart. Next one is question number 13. 0 times 2. Think about what we learned about 0. You have no groups. So if you have no groups right to start with, you don't have anything. Your answer should have been 0 because of that 0 property of multiplication. Okay, before we come down here to the bottom, I see some symbols we might not be familiar with. So we're going to go back to our slideshow really, really quickly. Let's see here. Sorry about that. All these buttons sometimes make me just click, click, click. Here we go. This is the cool slide I wanted to show you. Okay, so it's been a long time since we have probably seen these symbols. These are symbols we use to compare numbers to determine which number is greater than, less than, or equal to. If you notice, we're using like alligators. So depending on the numbers will depend on which symbol to use. So let's do some as a practice. I'm going to move this out of the way really quick so I can use my pen. Here we go. I have 112 and 54. So I know that a 3-digit number is going to be bigger than a 2-digit number. This 112 is greater than 54. So I'm going to put my comparison sign facing that way. 112 is greater than 54. The opening is towards the larger number. The mouth is eating that larger number. The great big opening is towards the greater number. Next one, 31 is to 47. I know that 30 and 31 is smaller than the 40 and 47. I know that it's going to be smaller, so I want to make my symbol show that way. Once again, just like up here, I made the great big opening towards the greater number. See how I did that there? Next one. Once again, We are comparing a 3-digit number to a 2-digit number. Easily, I know that a 3-digit number is larger than a 2-digit number. So 107 is greater than 71. That great big opening is towards the greater number. All right, boys and girls, here is your job. You need to get out a piece of paper and a pencil. You are going to write down these sets of numbers. You are going to use the symbol either greater than, less than, or equal to show if these numbers are greater than or less than the numbers next to it. I'm going to give you 1 minute to grab your paper, get your writing tool, and complete these 3. Please begin. You have 30 seconds left. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay, so 16, 102. We should know that a 2-digit number, once again, is smaller than a 3-digit number. So I am going to place my symbol that way. So now it reads 16 is less than 102. My great big opening is towards the bigger number, excuse me. So I have 2-digit numbers here, 2 of them. So I have to look at the tens place. I know that 5 is greater than 1, so 52 is greater than 15. And last but not least, I know that 12 is less than 61. So now that we are familiar with our symbols, we are going to use this information to go back into our math book. So I'm going to get started with you guys on that right now. So make sure you have your math book ready. So now that we know our symbols, now that we practice them, we're going to use that to help us complete some of these. These look really complicated and scary, but I promise you they are not. So we are going to work together to do 16 and 17. So let's begin. We have 1 times 6 is blank to 8 times 0. So what do you have to do first in order to answer this? Well, you should have said we have to solve them. 1 times 6, one group of 6, or we know our rule, the identity property of multiplication rule. Anytime we're multiplying with 1, the answer is the other factor. So 1 times 6 is 6. We also know that when we're multiplying with 0, the answer is always going to be 0 because you have 8 groups of nothing. 8 times 0 is 0. We have a 6 and we have a 0. That is very easy to compare. We should know that 6 is greater than 0. Very good. Number 17. Once again, we're multiplying with 0. Very easy. 0 times 6 is 0. Oh, look, the commutative property. They use the same numbers. They just flip-flop them. Is 0. 0 is blank to 0. Now, we didn't use this symbol on the slideshow, but we know 0 is equal to 0. So we're going to use the equal sign for the first time today. There we go. So now what I'd like you to do on your own, you are going to go ahead and answer 18 and 19 independently. I'm going to give you about 1 minute to do that. Go ahead. 30 seconds. Okay, let's begin. So on number 18, you should have written down on your paper that 0 times 7 is 0. 5 times 1 is 5. And when I'm putting my symbol in here, I should know that 0 is less than 5. Last one, and then you are moving on to independent work. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 9 is 0. That means 0 is equal to 0. Okay, so boys and girls, before we move on to independent work, let me sum up 2 things for you. Number 1, anytime you're multiplying with 1 times anything, the answer is always going to be the other factor right there. So if it's a 7, the answer would be 7. If it's 1,000, the answer would be 1,000. Next one, if you are ever multiplying with 0, that means nothing. That means zilch. So anytime you're multiplying with 0, it doesn't matter if this number here is 1,000. Your answer is always going to be 0. So please remember those 2 math rules for multiplying with 0 and 1. So we are now ready to move on to our independent work. Boys and girls, you are going to be doing this, like I said, independently. So what you are doing is you are working on page 77. All you're simply doing is doing just what we did together. You are doing 1 through 13. And look what is above you. How awesome is this? It's going over exactly what we learned. The identity property of multiplication. When you multiply a number by 1, the product is that number. When you multiply a number by 0, the product is 0. Everything's there for you. Now, boys and girls, it says down here to draw a picture. Feel free to do that. We should know, and I'm going to do one more for you just as a tip. 1 times 3 means 1 group of 3. There's my answer, 3. So feel free to draw a simple model to help you with this. All right, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope it helped you with your learning with this. All I have left to say is good luck, try your best, and make sure you are using the pictures above this page to help you. All right, have fun.